He's the Arkansas beer stalker, Arkansas beer stalking man.
Atticus Oldman in conversation with Martin Wattinger of the Wattingers. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've just been listening to the Wattingers, one of my favourite bands, and a band that's going to be appearing at the inaugural flight of the airship North Star. Martin from the Wattingers joins us now. Martin, my friend, how are you doing?
Well, I'd say it'd be right to say that I'm fair to middling right now. Thank you very much for asking. And how about yourself there?
I'm doing away. Now, the Wattingers are purveyors of fine meats and slaughterhouse punk, which is kind of one of the subgenres of steampunk, which has a flavour and a toothsomeness all of its own. Could you tell us a wee bit more about slaughterhouse punk and the Wattingers and how you all came about?
Well, it comes about really in terms of the Wattingers. We got a long history of slaughterhouse and butchery. Goes all the way back to, I think, the Pilgrims really coming over from England to America. And our great grandpappy Ezekiel Obadiah Wattinger, he could carry a tune and so forth. So there's a musical tradition in the band, in the family, that went all the way through to where we are today. Now, we got a lot of influences coming in from different types of music and so forth. And I think really the idea of the slaughterhouse punk, slaughterhouse blues, we got lots of different names you can call it for people who like. It helps them to have a label, and we can say it's steampunk, industrial, gothic, alternative blues. But ordinarily, I would say influenced by the old blues players from a time when they couldn't even afford guitars, and they would maybe just use a harmonica and get some great sounds out of the harmonica. And that's kind of where we starting from, that basic stuff, strip it all the way right down there and start from scratch. Well, you've probably seen us. There's only really two of us on stage at any given time, but we do have the remnants of my great grandpappy Ezekiel Obadiah Wattinger, because there's parts of him that we fixed into a cabinet, and he can produce some rhythms and so forth, and some backing singing with us to help us. And this is all based on some technology that somebody in the 50s created. His name was Joe Meek, I believe, and he came up with this idea of a spiricom, which is a way of communicating with the dead. And this is really just something similar to that, really. There's a lot more I could talk about in terms of moving in and out of different time, space, and different realities and so forth. But really, I think we just really need to be keeping it to the music, I think, maybe in a little bit of history about what the Wattinger do and so forth. I don't know if that answers any kind of question, or just does it make like even more questions.
No, that's fantastic. So basically what you're saying is it's like there's two of you live on stage, and there's possibly one of you after life on stage. So like
that's right.
That's excellent. That's kind of what I've heard about your performances, and the one kind of sort of like vibe that I get back from everybody that's seen you live and after live is what an amazing performance that you've got going on there. It's quite kind of stunning what you actually come out with. I mean, it's the heavy pounding bass, the vocals, the Hammond guitar sound and all that. It's kind of timeless. But it's so modern at the same time,
Well, I think what we've done there is to somehow almost reinvent something that has always existed there. And for me, I was always myself a bass player. I started off playing the bass. I couldn't understand. I never learned to read music, and I still haven't read any music. I really is where I come from, is the bass. I love bass players. There's some fantastic, when I say I love them, you know what I mean by that. I don't necessarily love them, but sometimes I do. But mainly, it's a drive, and there are some fantastic bass players in the world and historically that have inspired me, including a lot of the dub music that come from people like Augustus Pablo, Tubby by another name, and John Burnell from the Stranglers,
Oh yeah.
and Barry Adamson from Magazine. There's so many bands that I could be thinking of or musicians there. But for me, it starts with the bass, and I tend to write all of the Wattinger songs, and nearly always they come with a bass riff that I have in my head, and then I work rhythm around that, and then I add all the other bits and pieces to it. But by and large, that's how it all starts, and you will see that there is that consistent bass feel to the whole thing. And for me, that's the most important instrument to have live on stage is a bass. And if you got a guitarist, then fine. If not, you don't need a guitarist. You just need a harmonica. That's all you need.
Well, to be honest, I've always been a fan of the bass, back from the Geezer Butler days with the old Black Sabbath and that.
Well, there you go. That's my first band that I ever was interested in. That was the most important band to me in my life. The first Black Sabbath LP. There you go.
Amen, bro. Amen. I'm way on that. I mean, Geezer just sort of like, I mean, Geezer and Tony Iommi was such an amazing blend. I've fallen in and out in love with the rest of the members of the band over the year, but sort of like Tommy and Geezer, they have just been so solid and so tight. And no matter what other bullshit, pardon my French, a band can actually come out with, it's with the arty-farty sort of like stuff that you get with some of the bands out there. If it's got a solid bass and it's got a solid guitar line, then you're sorted and all that. And, with the Wattingers, you might not have a live guitarist, but it's sort of like there seems to be quite a lot of organ sounds going on there that maybe, replaces the guitar. And it's like, to be honest, you've got such a full sound, considering it's such a small band. The three are there, but you would expect it, when I first heard you and then I saw you, I thought, well, where's the other 2-3 members of the band? Because you've got
That's right. Well, I do believe there's a bit of a knack to getting that balance right, because I've always have a history of, in the past, of using kind of backing tracks in the different bands that I've been. I've been in full bands before. I played bass or played guitar, and I've sung in different bands and that in the past. But there is a real skill, if you like, I believe, that I do have that now in putting stuff together so that your rhythm tracks don't sound like they're just like a drum machine, and keyboard sounds, they messed up the same way we mess everything up. I just use a really old Casio SK1 sampling keyboard that came out some many years ago. And I put it through various pedals and so forth. So it's all what you might call lo-fi, and it gives it that feel to it. It gives it a certain sound to it. And it's all about just getting enough balance right so that you can carry it. And also, I do believe that, like I said before about what people say about the way we perform and so forth, I believe that we need to move around a little bit and put ourselves out there a little while, because I know that some of the stuff we do, it does scare people. And there are people that we know, adults that we know, that don't want to come and see us live because we scare them. And really, at the end of the day, we are just like some really mighty fine, cuddlesome little teddy bears, really, when it comes down to it.
Cuddle little warrior. I can see that on a T-shirt. But this year you're actually getting out and about a wee bit more. I mean, you've been out and about a few of the festivals. I heard, Crew was a bit of a blast?
Well, that turned out to be a really lovely event. I guess everybody's a little bit worried that it was quite an ambitious event. There was several venues running stuff all at the same time, quite a few bands and performers playing. And I guess there was always a concern there that would there be enough people there to attend these things? Well, it did seem like there was, because as I understand it, there's a good chance that's all going to happen up again next year. And this is something where they had to keep the local council folk happy. It was commissioned, and I'm guessing by all accounts it was successful for us and for all the other performers that we met there. Really enjoyed it, but I understand that it was definitely a success for the organizers and everything. So we'd be up for doing that again, definitely next year if we can.
Everybody was blown away with it, but you've got a wee trip north coming up shortly. In fact, this coming weekend, You're going to be taking an airship, I do believe.
Well, that's true. We're heading right up there to I guess it's Northumbria, somewhere up there at the airship North Star. We got some friends of ours going to be playing up there too. That's going to be a long journey because I'm coming down from the southwest of England, and my bass player Rand, he's now living up in Scotland. So for him, that's just going to be about a couple of hours train, I believe. But for me, it's going to be about like 7.5 hours or something like that. But there's something to really look forward to, I would say.
It certainly looks like being a great event. What stunned me is Daniel, the chappie that's put it all together. It's probably, as far as I know, this is the most northern festival that's really been centred around steampunk that's happened yet. But he's managed to get most of the big names, chappies like yourself and Gurdy Bird and Dale and Lord Monty and, Titty Von Trans. And there's so many folk coming up for this. Do you think there could be a kind of northern invasion in the offing, for the steampunk?
Well, I have to say that for me, I've been very taken aback by how we started and how we got brought into the Southwest steampunk community and how we met up with all these other people. And now we are we have an identity of a group of people. We all do completely different type of music, but we all fit right into that very broad umbrella of what you call steampunk music. So, and we're all moving around together. So yeah, I do believe that we got this thing happening now from the southwest of England. I think we kind of showed a lot of the people that what we can do, and now we're kind of moving up into the north and up into Midlands in the north and so forth. So I really do hope that we can lay roots everywhere, really.
Well, you've got a lot of friends up and down the country, thanks to sort of like, the sounds that you've been putting out in various sort of like online activities, like the Gasp radio show. I've got to hail for being one of the original sort of like influences for my own show, and the people that actually introduced me to the Wattingers in the first place. But how would you really see this sort of like, the year ahead, or sort of like 2 years from now, what is the path that the Wattingers are on? Where do you expect to be shortly? Where are you heading to?
Well, I reckon we're heading to the asylum if Rand keeps on biting people on stage. And sometimes he can do the gigs because he is locked up every now and again. And I do have another bass player in case of these things happening. Somebody who doesn't bite as much as Ren, but he's still a little bit bitey. His name is Cletus Kai Babadook Wattinger, and but anyway, that's another diversionary story there. Here, in the future, well, it's difficult to say. I do have myself a full-time employment here in the southwest of England, so I'm not sure how much far I can get away from things. However, having said this, I would still like to be getting out to Europe, perhaps, and even America or Canada, because I guess we kind of made friends and contacts that are across the world there that we know would like us to get out there and play at some of their venues abroad, but it's all down to practicality. But I would say that this year we do seem to have some very good gigs out and about, and I'm hoping that if we can keep our reputation up and our standard up and so forth, that we'll get bigger and bigger fans and then move on. I think gradually we'll bring out another release, but I'm really looking forward to doing more collaborative stuff now on our last CD that's out. There is remixes by Gurdy Bird, and she's going to do some more for us as well. I think she's a very busy lady. She's a great artist, as you know. She makes fantastic items and makes great music and so forth. I believe she's very busy, but she will be doing some work.
She did a fantastic version of The Devil's Trombone, which is one of my favourite Wattinger's tracks, but it's just superb what she did to it. I've got to say, she's an absolutely fantastic person,
And it was because I heard the stuff she did when she was doing all that work with the Gurdy Bird and so forth, and the kind of musical influences she had. I thought, really, I do need to meet up with her and see what we can do. And I have to say also that I believe that I've helped her a little bit in terms of being able to perform, because she uses projections as well, like the
Yeah.
Wattingers do, and just some technical stuff there that I helped her with, which to me is very much about my spirit of working with people, is very much about supporting everyone and being part of something there and making something really good happen there. So there's a mutual thing there. Is I really would support her, and then she doing the same for us by doing remixes and so forth, and adding some other dimension to what we do. And I think you got to do that. You got to be like precious about your music to some degree, and then you got to be able to say, hand it over to somebody else and say, look, you do whatever you want to do with this, and we're going to use it. You know, you can do whatever you like with it. Another person I give track to, the Arkansas Beanstalk song, was a colleague of mine, and he's very, very busy at the moment, but I'd like him to do some remix as well on some songs. So this is what I'm looking at, is maybe doing some collaborative stuff for another album, but I guess it ain't going to happen really until maybe about 9 months or something.
Well, certainly the last album was an absolute blast, and some of the tracks that you've had coming out since then, one of my favourites at the moment, like, and might appear on a wee podcast to do with the Airship North Star, is Evil Driving Rain, which, what you were saying earlier about the bass and your voice together, I mean, it's like, it's like a duel-off in parts. But it's like a dance that you've got going on there. It's superb. It's absolutely sublime.
I do appreciate what you're saying there, and it's interesting to have like a take on it from somebody who's removed from the process. Because, like I say, I might just be sitting there and I'm trying to think of how I started that song up. I do think I had an idea. I think I was messing around with the stylophone actually, and I just come up with the riff, just the riff that I use, and it is done on the stylophone actually, and a little old keyboard. And then I figured I just got to make a rhythm to this, make a really simple rhythm, and it kind of grew like that. And sometimes when you get that vibe going, words just come to you. Sometimes it can take you months and months and months to write a song, and then other times the words are just jumping into your head because the music is making something happen there.
Just writes itself, yeah.
This is what can happen sometimes. And there's some sound on there as well, which I really like, and that's years ago I was doing a lot of experimental stuff, like making tape loops out of quarter-inch tape and using FM radio, shortwave radio, and all that kind of stuff, and affecting it. And I had cassettes of all this noise that I've made, and that's what I'm using in the background of that song there. It's random, really. I just run the tape, and it makes the noise that it makes, and it fits where it fits, and it drops out where it drops out, and that's how that song was made, really.
It's a perfect track. Like, I mean, it sums up in many ways what steampunk's all about for me. Like, if you asked me to actually put it into words, I probably couldn't. But my emotionally and sort of like with my dancing booties, it affects my dancing booties. It gets my booties out there and getting it loudy, which is probably the best tribute I can give your music, mate. There's very few songs that actually get me dancing.
Well, that's really good to hear. And like we were saying before, it's all really about where it hits you. And I think about rhythm and the bass. The bass gets you in them parts of the body that need to be got to, if you see what I mean. Whereas I do think the higher sounds like a harmonica and the guitar there, more like giving you a bit of an intellectual interference, if you like. Whereas I think the bass and a good rhythm there, they just get you in your feet and in your loins and in your gut and so forth. That's how I think it works.
Well, my dear friend, I'm going to have to love and leave you now, but it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Before we go, could you give us a wee heads up about, do you know your times and dates for North Star yet, when you're actually on stage?
Well, we're going to be on Friday night, and we're going to be on quite late. I believe we're going to be second to last band on, and I think they have to close the live music something around about 11-ish, maybe a little bit later because of licensing and so forth. So I got in my mind that if you're definitely going to come and see us, to be around for at least 10 o'clock, I would say. But you should be there all night, really, taking in the whole ambience and the atmosphere. But I believe it'd be something around about maybe 9:30. I think we got about an hour. Maybe we got about an hour to play, something like 50 minutes. So be a 9:30. Yeah. Well, I would say be there for 9 o'clock, just in case we on any time between 9 and 9:30.
Well, speaking to the audience out there, ladies and gentlemen, this is one act that you really don't want to miss. Well, Martin, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, as I've said. Where can folks find you online?
All right. Well, once upon a time, we did have a website, has nothing on it. We're keeping that domain open, but you can find us on Facebook very easily. That's probably more likely where all the stuff is happening and every bit of like photographs and ideas and so forth up there. So that's the Wattingers on Facebook. And then I think if anyone needs to get in touch with me, you can get in touch with me through that. And if not, then there's an email address that's with the Wattingers Facebook site. And if you're interested in the music, you can find us on Bandcamp. You can order the CD as a hard copy CD, or you can download some of the tracks. You can't download everything because it's something to do with licensing. We do a cover of a Howling Wolf song called Killing Floor, and we got a kind of a license to be able to put that on a number of CDs, but not for download yet.
Yeah.
So anyway,
no, that's understood. Well, my friend, that's, this has been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I so wish I could have been at North Star this year. Unfortunately, I'll not be able to make it. But for folk coming along to visit the event, then the Wattingers have to be one of the acts that you just can't miss. Absolutely storming. Everybody says it. Martin, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'll talk to you again soon, my friend.
All right. You have a good evening there.